Well, today on Inverted Podcast, we have the honor of having our daughter Terah here with us today. Terah, first, I just want you to tell a little bit about just where you're at in life and who you are, what you're doing.
Okay, so my name is Terah Barnes. I am y'all's daughter, so John and Christi's daughter. Currently, I am in Colorado. I'm getting my master's in physician assistant studies education. So just in the midst of that and doing school and preparing for the next season of life.
And for me, this is like the fun things that I just love about your calling in life. You don't want to practice medicine here in the States.
No, I do. My ultimate goal after paying off my loans from school and getting that all done is to go overseas and work somewhere that's medically underserved.
Absolutely. And she gets a great honor of next month getting to experience Guatemala, doing clinicals there.
Yeah, exciting.
It's exciting for my mom heart, for a whole nother podcast to talk about just that heart for biblical views and global outreach and how you were raised. But today I wanted to talk about, we often get talked about parenting tips and biblical parenting, but we don't get a lot of opportunity to talk about what a parent relationship looks like. And I really wanted to hit on that today because I often really have to talk about what correction with connection looks like. And so I had a few questions, and what better way than to get the advice from a grown kid that has full liberty to say what she wants and feels. That adult-parent relationship is really special, and we love when we've made that transition. There's a different freedom, but you get to learn a lot. And I've had the blessing to have a lot of do-overs because of the number of children and the years we've parented. So Terah, what advice would you give a parent if their child is in a place where they aren't living the way that they've been raised or upholding the values of family or the family that they were raised in?
Well, I think the question kind of has different answers depending on what age of child you're talking about. You did just mention, kind of the benefits and some of the freedoms that come with being an adult child and having an adult-child relationship. So I think that's a different dynamic than the child parent that is under, their parent's authority. Yeah, a teenager. That obviously I think would look a little different. So I guess I'll start with for younger kids because, you're asking this question because we have some personal experience with what conflict between a parent and a child looks like growing up. So, something that I think y'all did very well in that time, and we've talked about this before, as you said, but was just holding to your values. And you did not give in. You still disciplined, you never wanted to be my friend. That was a big, a big point of my childhood. I think you actually said multiple times, I'm not your friend.
You have enough of those.
Yeah.
You need parents.
You have enough of those. So, you did continue to discipline and you didn't, waver on that and your values as a family. And that was really good. But, one thing that I think is important is keeping that relationship and that connection open. And it's a really hard line, and obviously me not being a parent, I can't necessarily say where that line is of disciplining and keeping that relationship open because that's hard to balance, right?
Well, one of the reasons that question came up is because yesterday I got to see someone who has been in your life and is currently in mine, kind of still local, and they're raising teenagers. And she said one thing that I observed when young adult Terah, college life Terah, was that we wouldn't be upset with each other. She said, how did you maintain a relationship when Terah was like out of your home in a different place of life? And you would draw those lines, but yet it didn't seem to affect y'all's love. And I just appreciated that so much because those are some things that being so close to it, I don't realize. And so from your perspective, advice or parents, how did that happen? How did we get to keep a relationship, whether teenage or young adult, when our places in life were very different, and our views about different things were different?
I truly believe that a big pivotal moment when that transitioning of my kind of, adulthood and that college period was happening was when, you kind of told me you can do what you want to do, because, and it was, I'm not going to say it was totally innocent at the time of you were just so enlightened by God and saying that. But what came of that, and the fruit that came of that, is you held to that, and you respected me as an adult in that to allow me to make my own decisions. And that was a big shift, I think, from maybe some of the parenting that you did in childhood, more based around fear of what could happen and what the worst, of situations that I put myself in or whatever it may be, which is totally understandable as a parent. But when that shift happens and you aren't being driven by fear, I think number one, your child sees that. And so me being an adult at the time, that feels respectful, even though I knew you did not necessarily agree with the choices I was making, you did respect me enough as an adult to make them. And because, you gave that freedom, you allowed the door to be open for me to share that with you, for some of those communications to happen that wouldn't have happened before.
You would have hid those things like teenagers do.
Yes, exactly.
And side note, parenting from a place of fear, we came to that realization, and I was able to work on that because we went to family therapy, and it was our therapist that said, like, you can't fear the worst case scenario of every one of your children's decisions. And I had realized a lot of my parenting was parenting from a place of fear, and that needed to be broken because God didn't give us a spirit of fear. And perfect love casts out all fear.
And I would say, like, the second part in the spiritual aspect of that is that I think God respects and honors when you have faith in him. As using our family as an example, you raised me faithfully. You raised me, in a godly household with good examples. And, not that y'all were perfect, but y'all did a good job in raising your household and raising your kids. And so where I may, as I got older, not have continued on the path that you wanted me to continue on or do the things that you wanted me to do. I think when you stepped back and you really entrusted me to God, because that's what the scripture says.
I can't control it.
Yeah. Raise up your children and they will remember, they will remember their household and the values that you ingrained in them. So I think that also, the other aspect of that is that God really does honor when you take a step back and do anything by faith, but especially, something that as a parent you treasure so much, your children. There's nothing really that would be harder to entrust to God. So
I remember when you were little, it'd say, I love you, but
God loves you more.
What does a child need from a parent in times of waywardness or rebellion?
Relationship, I think that's kind of the key point there. And I think that's not even, we know that from experience, but that's also, like, once again, scripture based, like with the prodigal son and the parable of that, what do we see as the father's response, right? After everything, not only, and look, that even goes back to the last question, not only did he give the son what he wanted, that wasn't a good decision that he was making, asking for his inheritance earlier, dishonoring his father, you can get into all that stuff. But ultimately, he probably knew his son was going to squander that money, and he let him do that. He honored his decision as an adult son.
I wouldn't have done that.
And let him go, where he was going to go. But the minute his son came back, how did he receive it?
Yeah, completely. Was there ever a time that you thought you could not come home because of the bad you'd done?
No.
Good. I'm glad. I didn't know how you were going to answer that one.
I knew there was times you probably wouldn't have been happy to see me, but I didn't think there was times I couldn't come home.
Good.
So I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
So talking about, and I know the story a little bit of y'all's, but for them, for the podcasters and the people that are listening, for you, Christi, when there was situations where's that line as a parent that you would say, where it's like, hey, I got to let my kid go, and also, okay, this is going to hurt them more than it needs to. Mm-hmm. I know that's probably where a lot of parents struggle, but what would you recommend is like that line of going like, hey, it's okay that they're going to, like as a kid, like you tell them, hey, get your fingers away from the socket, right? Because
Absolutely.
shock them. You know, okay, maybe they just need to learn it for a quick second, then they'll never do it again, right? So how do you find that line as a parent?
So for me, great question. It was not trying to control or let what you can't control you. And the line for me happened when some of the choices of what we wouldn't allow in our household were going to affect younger kids in that household. And so as a young adult, she was at the place that I couldn't allow some things in my house that my younger children would be exposed to. And so that young adult, knowing that I could not let what I can't control me, that young adult stage where you give options. You can be here. We'd love for you to be here. You're in college. We want to make it easy on you. Or you can choose to live outside of our home. It's going to be a lot harder. Bills are harder. You're going to have to work harder, as she did, and she killed it. And knowing that would be harder. And truthfully, I wanted her to pick the latter. I wanted her to stay safe. I didn't want her to make choices that I had to rebuke fear that I thought were going to destroy some of the goals she had for herself. And they didn't. God was faithful, but that was the line for me.
So for you then, I'm sorry, I know this is not part of it, but this is helping me with my family, but also hopefully others. For you, don't know what the situation is and don't have to get into it. Did you feel part of it going, hey, thank you for opening a home, but this is something I got to go do and I got to get out of it? And if it was something like that, then I'm sure there's other kids that might be listening to this going, I need that. Doesn't mean I don't love my parents. Doesn't mean I don't respect them. But it's something I need to go do. Was that where you kind of felt in that situation? If so, how would you recommend somebody to do that in a healthy way?
So good.
Yes. So I would say definitely for me that it was something that I felt like I needed to do. Now, our situation was a little different. Like when this happened, I was a junior in college. I had already been out here. They just moved out here. So it was a different situation. I had been on my own for a while, in the sense of just not with them. So it wasn't necessarily, not only did I not want some of the boundaries and the things of the house in that situation, but I also, just as you said, I really felt like I was on my own and I needed to be fully on my own. And I did, obviously, to grow up and learn some of the lessons I did. And, you know, it's hard for me to speak to that because I do have really good understanding parents, I would say. They're very available for communication and easy to talk to. But ultimately, you know, we did have some hard conversations in that time, and there wasn't really any progress made until we both said what we want. So I think that's the best advice I could give, because ultimately, you know, if we were trying to say something to make the other person feel better or to sugarcoat, you know, the situation or whatever it was really just delaying the inevitable. And I think that was what brought us to that point, was the fact of we had both spent so long of trying to get the other to see our point of view and, you know what I mean? And to, just make the other person happy, while also try to be able to do what we wanted. So that's where the breakdown.
We both had to compromise.
We had to compromise and be honest with each other. You know, we had to ultimately eventually just say, which is hard. You know, I love my parents and I always do, even, you know, in the midst of our disagreements, that I had great parents. So it sucked to have to say, you know, I don't want this right now. Like I want to go off on my own, and I understand what you're saying. But ultimately, I will say, you know, it just had to get to a point of real honesty for us to move forward from it and go on and build a new relationship from that point. Because I think we were both hurt, but that also allowed, you know, the door for a really adult relationship to be able to come up from that, which is a transition. It definitely is. And I think that honestly made it easier than even for some families who may have had like a totally, you know, calm childhood and are trying to transfer to, you know, an adult relationship, because I see that around people, and kind of that weird, really messy, terrible time of just cut off ness for a little bit really, made, I think, the transition easier and made our relationship more beautiful faster, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like
I always tell parents when they're struggling in that senior year, because one parent's struggling to hang on and the kid is ready to launch and go out and they're having that ebb and flow, that God helps you not to like them at certain seasons so that it's easier to transition and let them go. So you love them so much that it's almost, you get to a point, then just go. Just go. Terah, I always talk about my hopes and dreams for our relationship, with all y'all kids, and the future of what I hope that our life looks like with kids and grandkids. But I've never asked you yours. And I just thought about that in reflecting on this podcast. So what is your desire and what do you envision of our relationship, not being only throughout your adulthood, but as the potential of us future grandchildren of your future children? I think that's something that maybe parents or college students watching this might not ever think about, is if you've got goals, you work towards those goals, and is what you're doing now contributing to those goals? I know what I want, but I've never heard from my daughter what she envisions that looking like, and it might be really different than my very happy Smurfs family, where every in-law can hang out and we're all together and we're all doing life together very intimately. But what do you envision that relationship being like, and how can we honor those boundaries for you?
like ours.
Yeah, and for like when you have children in your marriage and.
Okay, well, I'd say that conversation, that question's a little difficult because what I would say, y'all raised us with a very good relationship with our grandparents.
Absolutely.
But we also had a really unique situation in the sense of we lived in Haiti. So
Absolutely.
We also, it was odd in the sense of we didn't see them for 9 months out of the year, or 10, but we'd come back to America for the 2 months and just live with them. So, we got this really intense, but fun 2-month time with our grandparents. So that was obviously a very odd situation, but it was one that I personally really enjoyed. And as I do want to pursue a life on missions outside of the United States, potentially, is what I feel that God has called me to. So, I haven't thought about it too much in the sense of we've always been a close family and I intend to continue that way. But if just off the top of my head, when you sent me this question earlier, I thought of, something to the effect of what we did. I don't know where God's going to have y'all at that point as well, which is also a factor in this whole thing. But, I really, whatever it looks like, even if we're in two different places, I see something like the relationship that we had with Annie and Poppy. And even if it's, we aren't close enough to see each other every week, maybe it's an intense, 2 months, 2 months as I'm flying in, from another country. So, but other than that, it was interesting when you asked me this, because I don't really picture too much changing, I guess, from now. And I think that's also me moving has a factor.
So weekly calls,
yes, and texts and
lots of texts,
catch ups and coming home.
Is it your desire that you'd have freedom with your kids, or is that something that you want to create with your husband, or you
freedom with my kids? What do you mean?
Well, some young adults don't want their grandparents to assume that they have free reign with their children.
Oh, you can do whatever you want.
Good.
Yeah.
That's what I
don't care. I'm taking them. I'm just speaking for myself in the future. I'm pretty sure you can take them anytime. That'd be fine. I trust you. You did a good job.
She used to say, don't do anything fun until I'm there, though.
Yeah.
She wants us to sit around doing nothing, twiddling our thumbs and say
just
all
don't do
the fun
anything
things.
big. They're talking about Disney World and stuff, and y'all can go on and we'll take the kids to Disney
She's
World.
like, no, you're taking me too.
You're paying for everyone.
What has been the most powerful and effective aspect of navigating hard times in our relationship?
What has been just that? Okay.
What has been the most powerful and effective aspect of navigating hard times in our relationship? What has kept us intact during hard things?
I would say our faith. That's kind of an easy answer to that question. Because I would say even in my hard times, there wasn't anything, I never strayed from my faith in the sense of question that, you know what I mean? I didn't ever question who God was or what my position with him was. I was very aware that I was not living in a way that he was happy with, but I think, you know, there was just deeper stuff going on at that time too, of just identity and figuring out who I was. So I would say ultimately, you know, in that time, in my frustrations with maybe some of the things that happened, some of the interactions that we had, I never doubted how good y'all were as parents. And I think faith plays a lot into that, right? Because I could not deny, you know, that y'all fostered a godly household and, you know, raised me well with good values. You know, even in my worst, I was still doing pretty good. and
even in our, what did you tell me this week? We saw some old pictures, and we were quite conservative at one time in our life. And she told me that I exploited her.
Oh my gosh.
To be used for.
You can't even say that you can't even say the slogan on this podcast. Because it's very offensive. Okay.
We went to a Bush rally, and she was dressed up in her Bush garb that I took her to
with
the rally.
With an offensive slogan. And anyways, I was just
she's not quite as conservative today as we
I
are.
changed my answer. There's some things you have to ask me about with my kids. Yeah, so,
I can't take. Yeah. I don't know that I would take them to a.
No, I just don't put offensive slogans on them. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not the same person either.
Okay, I got you.
So. What has been the greatest area where growth has improved our relationship? Where have we both grown that's affected our parent-child relationship the most? I think we respect each other as individuals. That's great. That's a good answer.
And I think that was a growing process. And not that we didn't respect each other before, but you respected me as your daughter before, and I respected you as my mother before. And not that that's any more or less respect. I think it's just a different respect when you begin to look at the person who has a close relation to you just as a human, you know, and just as an individual with their own happiness and sadness and, you know, trauma and experiences and what have you, you know. So I think that was
you don't see hurt done. You have compassion because you try to understand where that was coming from in their life. And, you know, in what we were talking about of just being honest and you saying, you know, letting go of some control, I think that there's inevitably a respect that comes with that, right? Like when you let go of the control and just allow someone to be them. Being willing to change, like not necessarily on your part, but my part, that I want to keep growing to be what my children need and do better with the next children and then the grandchildren and then that saying, right, they are not the same parents that raised me. I always giggle about that when parents say that about their children and grandparents, because I'm like, we shouldn't be. That means we've really learned some things and grown in that area. I remember one time speaking to a group of kids, doing a presentation as a counselor, and we were talking about goals. And a 7th grader, I think I've told you this story before, but had said their number one goal in life was not to become their parents. And that hit me like a knife that day. Terah, it was in Weatherford, and Terah was about 5th grade. And I just thought, if my children's life goal is not to be anything that I am, I really feel that I've missed something in what God created me for and living a legacy of love that I wanted in order to bring him glory. And I think I've told you that story as you've grown up. But if there's one thing that as you leave what you want to leave and take what you want to take from your childhood and home, I want y'all to think about that, what that answer would be for you. And if there's parents listening, what you think your children's answer would be in that. what would it be? Is, as I'm assuming or hoping, your one goal is not to be anything but us.
Yeah.
What did you love about what you witnessed in our home and the way that you were raised that's of value to you now?
I would say you guys have always exhibited a real commitment to community. And I think that's something that's not, that's kind of become rare these days. So it's something that I always really enjoyed growing up, but it's also something that I think is important for families, for your kids to see, but also for the people that you know what I mean, are in community with. We aren't meant to do this life alone. So not only was it good for us, the family, I think it was good for the community we were part of. It's relationships that we still have today. There's also just a benefit of having so many communities and so many people all around you, at all times, and so many, people to reach out to and who care.
Takes a village.
It does. So that is just something that y'all have always really been committed to and have always done well. And that is something that I would like to take into my home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing today, Terah. I value the woman that you are. I'm really proud of that. And I know that can be really difficult for a lot of parent-child relationships in transition, especially if they maybe don't see eye to eye on things, if their life are in different places. And there is one thing that you said to me that I will hold really dear. Just last year, y'all spoke about it Sunday on Father's Day in the message. Me and Dad were struggling during Ava's 16th birthday, and Dad was honest with you, and I was just feeling very hurt at that time. And I looked at you and I said, aren't you worried, because you were a little upset that coming home from college and grad school and medical school that you had to come home to a little bit of debacle? And I was kind of like, oh, I didn't control this. I didn't ask for this. But I was asking you, did it worry you? Mm-hmm. And without a doubt, you said, no, it didn't worry me. And I was like, well, I think you should be worried sometimes about us. You said, because at the end of the day, I know that I really believe as a kid that y'all are going to do what God wants. And you might not have known it then, but it really did stir me to remember the choices I make today are not just about me and myself or me and your dad. They really are looking forward to what I want our children and grandchildren to know of us and talk about one day around the table. So thank you for that too. You inspire me.
Of course. Thank you. You inspire me and always have.
Well, thank y'all for joining us today, and I hope y'all took some good nuggets and that y'all got inspired and kind of realizing that there's no perfect parents. There's no perfect families or homes, but if we strive to feel seen and heard and understood, we can have this side of heaven really good relationships, even if we are in different places with our thoughts and opinions about things and decisions in life, all the unique things that create parent, child, and individuals. So value one another. Have a great week. And thanks again, Terah.
Bye.